want to welcome you to this TED Talk. And my name is Ted, and I'm talking, so it's official. There are some jokes you just use over and over again. And tonight we're going to explore the world of Newsies, first as a film, and then how it evolved into a Broadway musical, which is a really interesting process. We're also going to talk a little bit about the history of Disney's live action musicals, but we're actually going to start with Newsies as a non-musical film. The screenplay was by Bob Trutziger and his wife Nona White, and they were looking at things that would be interesting stories, and they happened upon a story about the 1899 strike of the newsboys in New York. It started July 20th, 1899 and ended August 20th. So again, it had an impact on the publishers and the way people got their news back then. I mean, that's way before the internet, way before these hotshot reporters on the nightly news and the local news. You got it by reading a newspaper. And again, it could be biased, much like today's news can be biased. And it's up for the reader or the viewer to decide what is the important takeaway from a news story. So, Bob and Nona completed a screenplay, started shopping it around, and the Disney studios thought it might be a suitable property for their studio. And this was in 1990, 1991. And Disney Animation got resurrected by a little property called The Little Mermaid, which was an out-and-out musical that used out-and-out storytelling that you only find in a musical. For example, in Little Mermaid, you've got the I Want song, Part of Your World, that the executives at Disney wanted to cut because it slowed down the action. And can you imagine that show and that story without knowing what it is that Ariel the Little Mermaid wants? So, Jeffrey Katzenberg was the head of the Disney studios, both live action and animation at that point, and he thought, we haven't done a live action musical in years, and let's look at a little bit of the live action musicals that Disney had produced, and it's, I think, evident that doing a musical is a good thing. So, the first Disney live action musical dates back to 1961. And they did an adaptation of an old operetta by Victor Herbert from the early 1900s called Babes in Toyland. And it was live action, filmed on the back lot. It's very clear that there are stagey sets like you might see in a Broadway musical. The lyrics were adapted and updated, and the only thing that really had a lot of animation or special effects to it were the dancing trees and the toy soldiers that come to life in the final battle. The next musical that they did was really a kind of quiet piece called Summer Magic. And it was a musical with Haley Mills based on a novel called Mama Carey's Chickens. And the plot is kind of inconsequential, but who wants to turn down the opportunity to see Haley Mills?
Yeah.
So that was a semi-success, but then Disney exploded with 2 words, Mary Poppins. And it combined live action with some drawn animation, with big stars, or someone who wasn't a big star but became a big star as a result of Mary Poppins, which was Julie Andrews, that people knew from Broadway, but movie audiences didn't know. Then they jumped on the bandwagon, because with the success of The Sound of Music, let's make a musical film into an event. And they produced something called The Happiest Millionaire, which was what they called a roadshow attraction. It was a long enough movie that there was an overture even before the main titles began, and about 2/3 of the way they had an intermission where you could go to the bathroom and hear the songs again in the entr'acte. And this was not really a very successful film. They cut it, recut it, cut it down from its original running time, but there's a certain charm to it, because again, they had gotten a pretty cool cast for it. Fred MacMurray, Greer Garson, and in their film debuts, Leslie Ann Warren, and now I'm having a brain fart, John Davidson played the young couple in love. And they followed that up with another musical called The One and Only Original Genuine Family Band, which is fun. It's got some catchy songs, and it's worth looking for. I think you can see it either on the Disney Plus, or go to your library. They might have a copy on DVD if you still do old technology like I do. And then the last live action movie that they did was in 1972, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, with Angela Lansbury. There was a little bit of animation in that, but again, it's the live action and the storytelling that a musical does that propels it. So, the one thing that all of those had in common, and not Babes in Toyland, were songs by Richard M. and Robert M. Sherman, who were on the Disney staff as songwriters, and you've heard their title songs for The Parent Trap and That Darn Cat, etc. So there was a tradition of Disney musicals, which led Katzenberg to give the green light and figure out how to turn it into a musical. Well, his golden boy was Alan Menken, the composer, who had just won Oscar for Best Song Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid with his partner, Howard Ashman. Well, unfortunately, Howard Ashman was in the last stages of AIDS. And this was early in the AIDS epidemic, and we lost this talent that, again, really taught, I think, a lot of people what musical storytelling is about.